Good afternoon, my students and other learners. Welcome to our today's lesson. I'm Madam Patricia. Our today's lesson is on database approaches. There are two main approaches of databases. One, traditional approach. Two, database approach. We begin with traditional. Before the introduction of computers, we were using manual file system to maintain records and files in most of the offices and maybe institutions and so on. So this one refers to where data is stored in one or more separate files that are managed by different application programs. For example, you can have details of a customer being stored in more than one file, or being stored in one file and orders in another file. So each file is independent of the other file, and the data is in different files. Disadvantages of traditional file approach. 1. Data redundancy. This is making some duplication of the same data. So you find that each file has the same data that is being repeated from file to file, and that is not allowed in database. 2 is data inconsistency. If the data is kept in different files, there could be problems when an item of data needs updating. Because it is in different files, you find that the update is only reflected in one or two files. Then the other files, the update is not reflected. So this leads to errors and inconsistency. 3, difficult to implement data security. You find that data is stored in different files by different application programs, and this makes it difficult and expensive to implement organization of the security procedures on the data. 4, retrieval. It's not easy because you find that data is not in the same file. You have to look for files. You keep them on the table, then you start looking for the data that you are to look for. 5, time consuming. It consumes a lot of time. It wastes a lot of time when you are filing those data and also retrieving. 6, inefficient to maintain the record. Because if it's a big company, it has a lot of items to be stored. 7, requires a lot of labor to do the filing and also retrieval of data. The last one is limited data sharing. Because it is a manual way, it's not possible to send data to another person. Advantages of traditional file system. You find that it is simple to use. You don't have to do some training so that you can use it. Just a common sense. 2, it is less complex. It's easy to learn, in other words. 3, minimal investment. This means you don't need to maybe look for transport so that you can look for the file. You don't need to be trained and so on. The last one does not require any specialists or training to deal with traditional file system. Then we have the other approach, which is database approach. And this is the one that provides the user with a system, and the system is able to do querying. It's able to ensure security. It's able to be. It is integrity. It allows integrity It allows simultaneous access, whereby many users can access data at the same time or simultaneously, and it allows sharing of data. Advantages of the DBMS approach: 1, less space. It requires less space. You don't have to look for cabinet to store the data. The system has a lot of capacity for storing data, but it uses very small space. 2, it reduces data redundancy. You find that data is not repeated. There is no duplication of data. 3, there is data integrity. There is a lot of security of the data and continuity. 4, it allows backup and recovery process. 5, data model can be developed using the DBMS approach. 6, it allows concurrency control. 7, there is data independence. 8, there is a good performance of the system. Disadvantages of this approach: time consuming to develop the system. 2, it requires large space for storing the system itself. 3, it requires a processor with high speed to process the data. 4, the cost of data conversion is high. 5, sometimes we can face data failure or the system may fail, which leads to database failure. 6, we have buying the system is expensive. The other one is the system is complex, so you need to be trained as a user so that you can work with it, or you can access the data from the system. Then the cost of the DBMS, depending on the environment, function, and recurrent annual maintenance costs, that is, it is too high. Then we can look at the differences between the two approaches. And we have 1, the DBMS approach is very expensive compared to the traditional file system, which is cheap. 2, DBMS is good for the large system, but traditional can only deal with a small company or institution. 3, the DBMS requires a lot of effort for designing it, while the traditional system, it requires low design efforts. 4, the DBMS is highly secured. The data in it is very secure, while the traditional file system, it's not secure. 5, the DBMS, in DBMS data, it's shareable. You can share it amongst the users, while in traditional, the data is isolated, cannot be shared. 6, the DBMS is flexible, and the traditional file system lacks flexibility because it has many limitations. 7, the DBMS has no integrity, but when we look at the traditional file system, has integrity problems. And we also have DBMS as a complex backup system, but the traditional file system has a simple backup. So the DBMS is very complex when you want to back up. Thank you for attending my lesson. Remember to subscribe if you haven't. Thank you so much.